The Mercat Cross of Edinburgh stands in Parliament Square next to St Giles Cathedral, facing the High Street in the Old Town of Edinburgh. Description and history. The current Mercat Cross is of Victorian origin, but was built close to the site occupied by the original. The cross is first mentioned in a charter of 1365 which indicates that it stood about 45 feet from the east end of St Giles. In 1617 it was moved to a position a few yards down the High Street, now marked by an octagonal arrangement of cobblestones. This is the position shown on Gordon of Rothimay's map of 1647. In 1756, the cross was demolished and parts of the pillar re-erected in the grounds of Drum House, Gilmerton. A monument now stands there, and on it a plaque that reads, "Erected in memory of the Old Mercat Cross of Edinburgh, which stood at the Drum from 1756 to 1866. This monument was erected November 1882. 5 of the H-circular medallions featuring sculpted heads from the understructure of the original cross were eventually secured by Sir Walter Scott, who incorporated them into the gardened wall of his house at Abbotsford in the Scottish borders. In 1866, the pieces of the cross from Drum House were reassembled on a new step pedestal on the east side of the north door of St Giles. Because the pillar had been broken during demolition in 1756, its height was reduced after reassembly from 19.7 to 13.9 feet and its girth made thinner. In 1885 it was placed on a new octagonal drum substructure at its current location, 24 feet south of the original pre-1617 position. This was designed by Sidney Mitchell and paid for by William Gladstone, M.P. for Midlothian from 1880 to 1895, whose father and grandfather hailed from Edinburgh. The sculpted heads on the original cross were replaced by the Royal Arms of Britain, Scotland, England and Ireland, the Borough Arms of Edinburgh, Leith and the Canongate, and the arms of the university. The original shaft was replaced when the cross underwent extensive renovations in 1970. A study of the stonework, commissioned by the Royal Commission on the Ancient and Historical Monuments of Scotland and carried out in 1971, concluded that, embedded in the current structure are 2 pieces of an old shaftstone, that the capital belongs to the first part of the 15th century and that the unicorn is an 1869 reproduction of its predecessor on the 1617 cross, based upon a description in contemporary accounts. The tympanum above the wooden studded door on the east side of the cross bears the following Latin inscription composed by William Gladstone, in incised Gothic letters: Dio. Gratias vetvsdvm. monvmentvm. crvcem. bvrciedindnsis. pvblicis. mvneibvs. ab. antiqvo. dicam. carmine. tam. eximio. qvam. virili. a. svmmo. homine. gvatro. Scott. et. vindicam. et. defletam. PRASVLIBVS, MVNICIPII, PERMISSV, REDINTEGRANDAM, CVRAVIT, GVL, E. Gladstone, SDIRPE, ORIVNDVS, PER, VGRAMOVE, LINEAM, PENITVS, SCOTICAA, MDCCCLXXXV, Die, NOVEMBRIS. 24 Thanks to God, this ancient monument, the Cross of Edinburgh, which of old was set apart for public ceremonies, having been utterly destroyed by a misguided hand, MDCCLVI, and having been avenged as well as lamented, in song alike noble and manful, by that great man Walter Scott, has now, by favour of the magistrates of the city, been restored by William Ewart Gladstone, who claims through both his parents a purely Scottish descent. November 1885. Proclamations, burnings and punishments. As elsewhere in Scotland, important civic announcements were made at the Mercat Cross in Edinburgh. Royal and parliamentary proclamations that affected all of Scotland were publicly read. The practice of announcing successions to the monarchy and the calling of parliamentary general elections is continued to this day by heralds of the Lord Leon, King of Arms. The Protestant reformer John Knox relates that for 1 hour and 4 hours on 2 separate days in 1565 Sir James Tarbet was tied to the cross and pelted with eggs for saying the Mass, which had been banned by the Scottish Parliament 5 years previously. After the surrender of the Queen's men ended the long siege of Edinburgh Castle, William Kirkcaldy of Grange, his brother James and the 2 jewellers Mossman and Cocker, who had been minting coins in the Queen's name inside the castle, were hanged at the cross on the 3rd of August 1573. It is also recorded that, upon 2d day of December 1584, a Baxter's boy called Robert Henderson desperately put some powder and a candle in his father's heather stack, standing in a close opposite to the Traynor of Edinburgh, and burnt the same with his father's house, which lay next adjacent to the imminent hazard of burning the whole town, for which being apprehended most marvellously after his escaping out of the town, he was on the next day burnt quick at the Cross of Edinburgh. As an example, in 1591, John Dixon, convicted of parricide, was broken up on the row at the cross. This is one of only 2 recorded instances of this brutal form of punishment being used in Scotland, the other having also occurred at the cross. John Livingston of Dunyapace, the wife of John Kincaid, Laird of Warriston, had, with the connivance of her nurse, hired Robert Weir, one of her father's servants and her reputed lover, to murder her husband, which he did by strangling him in the night. Thanks to the intercession of her kinspeople, on the 5th of July 1600 Lady Warriston was granted the privilege of being beheaded by the maiden at Girth Cross rather than executed by one of the more usual methods for females, namely drowning or strangling before burning. The nurse was burnt on the same day her mistress was beheaded. 4 years later, in 1604, Weir was apprehended, tried and condemned to be broken on ane cartwheel with ane coulter of ane plefer in the hand of the hangman, next to the Mercat Cross. In 1600, after the failure of the Gowrie conspiracy, the corpses of John, Earl of Gowrie, and his brother Alexander Ruthven were hanged and quartered at the Mercat Cross. The heads were put on spikes at Edinburgh's Old Tolbooth and the limbs upon spikes at various locations around Perth. Alistair MacGregor of Glenstray, chief of the outlawed clan Gregor, was executed at the cross along with 11 of his kinsmen in January 1604. A contemporary recorded that, himself being chief, he was hanged at his Winhig Taboon, the rest of Hes Friendis. 6 days after the execution of King Charles I, the Scottish Estates proclaimed his son Charles II at the cross on the 5th of February 1649, thus directly challenging the English Parliament's acceptance of the Commonwealth. The cross was the place of execution of the Royalist leaders George Gordon, 2nd Marquess of Huntly, on the 22nd of March 1649, and James Graham, 1st Marquess of Montrose, on the 21st of May 1650. 5 of Montrose's close supporters were also beheaded shortly thereafter, following occupation by the English Parliamentary Army. The proposal to incorporate Scotland into the Commonwealth was proclaimed at the Cross on 4 February 1652, followed 3 days later by the symbolic act of hauling down the King's arms and ceremonially hanging them on the public gallows. In May 1654, General George Monk, the English military governor of Scotland, was present for the reading of 2 proclamations delivered at the Cross, the first declaring Oliver Cromwell to be the protector of England, Ireland and Scotland, and the second confirming Scotland's union with the Commonwealth of England. This union ended with the restoration of the monarchy in 1660. Soon after the Restoration, 4 men were condemned to death for high treason and executed at the Cross. Archibald Campbell, 1st Marquess of Argyll, was beheaded by the Maiden on 27 May 1661. James Guthrie and Captain William Govan were hanged on 1 June 1661, and Archibald Johnston, Lord Warriston, was hanged on 22 July 1663. Guthrie's The Causes of the Lord's Wrath and Samuel Rutherford's Lex Rex, regarded by the monarchy as dangerously seditious tracts, had been burned at the Cross by the common hangman in 1660. In June 1679, 2 Presbyterian ministers, John King and John Kidd, captured at Bothwell Brig, were executed for taking part in the battle. On 30 July 1680, David Haxton, a militant Scottish Covenanter, remembered mainly for his part in the murder of Archbishop James Sharp of St Andrews, was hanged, drawn and quartered at the Cross. The Solemn League and Covent was burned in 1682 during the period known as the Killing Time. The Marquess of Argyll's son Archibald Campbell, 9th Earl of Argyll, was executed at the Cross on 30 June 1681 for attempting to instigate a rising in Scotland to coincide with the Monmouth Rebellion. On 10 December 1688, a mob, having broken into the private chapel of King James VII at Holyrood Abbey and torn down the woodwork, carried it to the Cross, where it was burned along with an effigy of the Pope. In July 1725, amidst the malt tax riots, Robert Dundas says the petition of the several brewers in and about Edinburgh under-subscribing was brought to the Cross to be read aloud. On the 18th of September 1745, the young pretender, Charles Edward Stuart, had his father proclaimed King James VIII of Scotland and himself regent at the Cross. According to Robert Chambers in his History of the Rebellion of 1745, the ladies, who viewed the scene from the lofty lattices in the High Street, strained their voices in acclamation, and waved white handkerchiefs in honor of the day, but another history claims that few gentlemen were, however, to be seen in the streets or at the windows, and even among the common people, there were not a few who preserved a stubborn silence. Following the prince's defeat the following year at Culloden, the Jacobite colours captured in the battle were ceremoniously burned at the Cross. The Mercat Cross medallions at Abbotsford. The middle photo shows the Edinburgh Borough Arms. The hits have never been identified.